Our next speaker this afternoon is Joe Belladonna, Managing Director, Harena Resources. Please join me in welcoming Joe Belladonna. But first of all, let me say a few words about Joe's background. Joe Belladonna is an experienced mining executive with more than 20 years' experience in the financial and commercial management of listed mining companies. Prior to joining Harena Resources, Joe was CFO and Company Secretary of Western Areas for over 16 years. In his time at Western Areas, the company grew from a startup explorer that went on to discover, develop, and commission multiple nickel sulfide mines and processing plants, leading to it becoming one of Australia's largest nickel sulfide concentrate producers. Joe has in-depth knowledge and developed relationships with local and international metal offtake customers, participating and leading commercial negotiations with metal buyers and smelter operators. Joe holds a bachelor degree in business and is a certified practicing accountant. Joe Belladonna.
Thank you for that warm introduction. Thank you for everybody for being here on Friday afternoon, heading into that sort of graveyard shift moment, but obviously everybody's keen to get a drink at the end of the conference, so you're still here, so thank you for being there. Look, I'm quite new to Harena Resources. I've been with the group for about 8 weeks, and one of the first things I did was, Google Madagascar, and the first 5 references come up with a movie. So I thought that what I would do is actually not talk about that and maybe just throw a few facts about Madagascar in about Madagascar. Look, it's the 4th largest island in the world, 587,000 square kilometres. There's 29 million people there. It's a very diverse culture and religion. It's a presidential republic. So it's quite an interesting story when you actually start to investigate Madagascar and find out some facts about it. One of the things that it does do is it exports, and that's where we think that we might be able to help out with Harena. There's nickel, there's titanium, ilmenite, gold, and hopefully very soon we'll be exporting rare earths as well. So we're wanting to be part of that, that growing that economy as we move forward. And look, it's had a very long mining history. When I talk about nickel, that's the Ambatovi mine. Ilmenite is Rio Tinto, and Ambatovi is run by a joint venture with Sumitomo Metals and Mining. So there's large mining houses that are operating in Madagascar, and it's certainly a jurisdiction that we look forward to getting much more involved in. I'll just move forward now that I've had my little digression. There was a disclaimer there in case you needed to be disclaimed. Harena Resources is a rare earth company. I'll move on to Harena proper now. Our investment highlights, and I will say we are pre-IPO at the moment, so we haven't actually listed on the ASX, so unfortunately I won't have a corporate overview slide to go through at the end, but we are pre-IPO, hoping to be listed by the end of this year or very early into next year, and that process is ongoing now. But we are an advanced project. Harena won't be an exploration play as it heads forward. It already has a large resource that we'll be planning to mine as we move forward. It's development ready. The resource is at a 43101 level, and we are converting that to a JORC compliant resource as we move forward as part of that listing process. And there's an experienced team there. Everybody that's involved, I'm the new guy to the group. I'm also the guy with the least experience with being a 20-year mining executive. So there's a lot of good experience with the board and management. And we also think that rare earths is a commodity that you want to be involved in at the moment. The geopolitical situation that Tom highlighted really well around diversity of supply, the last few years of closed borders and closed economies really opened up the world's eyes to how we want to be sourcing our materials and where we want to be sourcing them from. And self-reliance and diversified geographical supply of product is something that we're really seeing move forward. I'll just pop on to our social pillars that we talk about, and we think these are the social pillars that will give us success. And there's the 4 pillars: the local communities, the employees, the government, and the investors. And we take the view that equal input is required on all of those columns that are holding up our social licence to operate as we head forward. And an example of that would be education. We're already starting to contribute to education assistance, sponsoring some of those types of activities in country, and we think that that's really important. That as we build this company, we're also building the local communities. We're helping employees. We're giving them new skills and opportunities. The government needs to be involved and be supportive and make sure that it receives its contribution. And if we do all of that really well, that fourth pillar of the investors will also do well as we head forward. So it's really important that we make it very clear that we're here to help everybody, and that if everybody's winning, we'll all be winning, including our investors. Just move on to a little bit about rare earths, and I won't talk about them a lot. Most people are a little bit aware of where rare earths are used, but the main thing for Harena is that it's an ionic clay resource, and the ionic clays bring a mixture of light and heavy metals. So a lot of people will know about niobium and praseodymium. They're the most commonly mined rare earths and the most commonly sold rare earths. But ionic rare earths also bring terbium and dysprosium with them. And they're the heavy metals that go into the magnets that go into things like wind turbines, the magnets that are in the motors that are driving electric vehicles. And so they're the important components that go into those high-end magnet applications, and the ionic clay resources bring those with them in spades. So it's really important that we understand that. And the next slide gives you a really good example of that. You can see the heavy rare earths neodymium magnet is holding far more of the stainless steel balls than a standard ferritic magnet. And you can see in the bottom there the NdPrs at 30% and the DyTbs at 3%. That's the 10-to-1 ratio of those elements that go into the neodymium magnets. And our ionic clay resource, luckily enough, comes at about that ratio in our basket. So it's really important to distinguish the difference between ionic clay rare earths versus the hard rock rare earths. And just, I guess, a little bit more on that. The clays versus hard rock. Unfortunately, I don't have a slide for this yet, but part of that 8 weeks with the group, I will get one. The heavy and the light rare earths come in the ionic clays naturally, whereas the hard rocks generally come with a higher level of NdPrs, or the neodymium praseodymium, without bringing the terbiums and the dysprosiums that make those neodymium magnets. Ionic clays, and I'll go through this in detail, it's a simple processing and a simple mining process. So it's got a lot of advantages over hard rocks that require pretty significant capital investments. And it's also, our plan is a zero impact mining plan. So then you also, you're not disturbing, you're taking your processing and then you're returning the ground back to as it was, versus the hard rocks where you're digging and leaving holes and you have waste dumps and the likes. But I'll give a bit more detail on that as we move forward. And the other thing with the ionic clays is it doesn't leave behind nucleolites, uranium or thorium type waste products. They just naturally aren't there, so that's really important as well. Let's move on to our project, which is called the Ampas and Dava project. Just a little bit of location. It's in the northwest of Madagascar. It's just off, zooming in a bit more. These islands up here are called the Nosy Islands. So there's an international airport there, which is really important for logistics and moving forward. And then the project area there is in the red. It is an exploitation permit at the moment. It will be converted into a mining permit as we head forward. There's a few things we need to do there, mainly around the environmental impact assessment and those sorts of things. And that's just part of the natural process that we'll be going through and working with the Madagascan government to make sure that we get those through in the right ways. I've already touched on it being an ionic clay resource, which is really important to understand. It's a 43101 compliant resource at the moment, which is the Canadian standard, similar to JORC. We are having that converted to a JORC compliant resource at the moment as well. So as part of our overall prospectus and listing process, that JORC resource will be reported as part of that process as well. It's had lots of work done on it. The metallurgy work has been done. There's been 5 sets of metallurgical test work completed. The final 2 of those were done by SGS Lakefield out of Canada, so a really reputable consultant has done that work, and it's given us that really simple flow sheet of leaching on surface, then going back into a concentrate or a carbonate product that we can ship. Let's move on again. Just a bit more detail on the actual project there. The brown outline you can see in the red there is the intrusive material that's come up. That's then been weathered over millions of years into a regolith profile. The regolith profile is where the ore body sits. We're only talking about the top 5 to 10 metres of the soil that would actually form part of the mining plan. There's been, you can see there's been some test pits that have been dug, picture B there on the slide. There's been nearly 4,500 of those dug, and instead of drilling, because moving drilling equipment around on the site it would be quite difficult, they were dug by, they dug test pits. Those test pits have given us a significant quantity of information that's been used to create the resource, which is really large. It's 600 million tonnes at 900 ppm total rare earths. To give you an impression of how long a mine life that would give you, we're talking about our current plan is around a 5 million tonne heap leaching operation. That's a 100-year mine life as we know it today. Once again, leading into it not being an exploration play, we've already got significant mineralisation to move forward with. It's a process now of completing the feasibility study and moving that forward as quickly as we can into production. And again, really good recoveries attached to the processing. It's a simple heap leaching process. It's a circular process. So we would remove the top layers of the topsoil, which would be 1 to 2 metres worth of soil. We take the clays, we agglomerate them with some reagents, we heap leach them on the surface. It's a saline leach followed by an ammonia sulfate leach. That's garden fertiliser. It might sound scary, but it isn't. Those 2 components then liberate the minerals off the clay. They report into solution. Once those clays are done, it goes through a nanofiltration process and a reverse osmosis process to remove water. The fresh water that's created by the reverse osmosis is used then to neutralise the heap. That material is then put back into the cavity where it was mined. The topsoil is replaced, and it's like no one's ever been there before. And being a sort of semi-tropical area, the ability for the area to regenerate itself is really quick. The flip side of that is that once it's actually been cleared and it's been mined, it could also be then converted into agriculture or other industries as well. Let's keep moving on. Bit of detail in the resource there. One of the things I guess we do point out in our resource is you can slice and dice heavy or rare earth deposits many ways. What we do say, it's important to have the valuable metals. Dysprosium and terbium are very valuable metals, so it's important to have those. And so a lot of our times we actually talk about our rare earth deposits including cerium and lanthanum and things like that, because they're of the lesser value compared to a lot of the other ones. But once again, there's 500,000 tonnes of heavy earths contained in the deposit, and that does provide us with a very long mine life. But I will just point out one thing, the measured resource. So there's 40 million tonnes of resource in a measured category that's grading nearly 1,000 total rare earths. That would be a 40-year mine life as we know it today in a measured component in a higher grade area. And we do think that as we move forward, you can see the red areas that are on the isometric there. They're grading in the 1,000 to 2,000 parts per ppm or in total rare earths. They're the high grade areas that you would target first, and those grades don't include a cerium value, so you could add 300 to 500 parts per million to those straight up. You'd be in the 1,300 to 2,500 range of those areas. So we'll be able to high grade the mine quite quickly as we get into production and target those areas. Look, I've already covered the zero impact mining cycle, but one thing that's really want to leave you with is that there's no blasting. It's a free dig operation. There's no waste dumps because all of the material that you mine actually goes back into the cavity where it was mined from. There's no tailings dam attached to these operations. Really, the only legacy that you're left with are the heap leaching pads, and they're quite easily rehabilitated. So there's actually, once you're finished your mining process, you can return it back to exactly as it was before you arrived. So that's a really important thing that we think is going to be really important as we head forward, especially as we are now in a time of the world where leaving lots of damage and lots of liabilities as you leave is very much no longer acceptable, and the zero impact mining cycle avoids a lot of that. Project development at the moment, I have already sort of touched on a bit of this, but we're converting our JORC resource, we're preparing for our listing. As we head forward, a lot of the test work that would be done out on site now will really be around validation of mining plans, and as we scale that up, that will give us the ability to go from an accelerated DFS into our early stages of met test work, trial heap leaches, and then they'll actually just be built on in a modular fashion. So between now securing our mining permit and starting those test heaps, or those first production heaps, we're only talking about 18 months to 2 years. So again, it's a development story, it's not an exploration story, and it's exciting to be here at this stage of the project. Just quickly, the Harena team, I've already touched on this. Apart from myself, I definitely won't call myself African experienced. Everybody that's involved in the group has got significant experience in the continent, and over a very, very long period of time. Alan Mulligan is our technical director. He's actually moved over to Mauritius to be a lot closer to the project. Mauritius is only an hour away from Madagascar, and that's really important to have people on ground that are supporting those social programs, engaging with government, and keeping an eye on things as they develop. Excuse me. So the value proposition is it's an advanced rare earth project. It's ready to go. It's ionic clay and it's got a short time frame to production. It's a simple process, as I explained. Even when an accountant can explain it, it must be pretty simple. It's simple, it's low cost. It's going to be low carbon because of the lack of significant machinery. There's no crushing and there's no grinding involved. We think that the international situation is right for rare earths at the moment, especially being, Madagascar is that island that I spoke about, and it's really ready to be part of the solution to our energy future as we go forward. The management's in the right place and has the right experience to do that. And our IPO valuation is designed to give people instant upside once we get that up and running towards the end of this year. So thank you for listening to us, and I'll leave you with our catch cry. We think we're powering the global energy transition with our rare earths, and that's me.